Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We're your hosts, David O.
Carly R.
And Eric V.
Today we're joined by our very special local guest.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know you didn't.
5 minutes ago.
I know. Yeah. You're welcome. Aaron, how are you doing today, man?
Well, good to be here.
Yeah, man. So where are you from, Aaron?
Well, I'm originally from York, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about an hour north from where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Born and raised. Yeah.
Nice.
Great. Happy to be in Maryland, though. Tell you what, it changed my life.
Hell yeah. When were you first introduced to recovery?
Man, recovery. I think it was either 2007 or 2008. I remember it was like Halloween season when I went to my first treatment center because they had like pumpkins and stuff. Yeah. So right around the fall time.
Okay, now we can gauge how high you were at the time. So okay, that's good. And how long have you been clean?
I've been clean 30 months and some days. Yeah. My clean date is February 18th, 2018.
Nice. Well, congratulations, man. And with all that out of the way, we're going to turn it over to you to share your story with us. So pitter patter, let's get at her.
Boo.
Love it. Great intro. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Absolutely.
I mean, doing something for my recovery is, super important. Whether that's going to a meeting, whether that's working on step work or reaching out to someone in my network. Because, for me, recovery has to come first. It's my number one priority, and I don't always put it up front. And I would be very honest. Lately, it's kind of been on the back burner, and I feel it. I feel it when I'm not involved, and it makes my life dealing with myself and the people around me much more difficult. Because just for today, I think it was today that I read in the NA literature, it said, when we're doing good, we tend to treat people good. Or when we're feeling good about ourselves, we treat the people around us well. And when we're not feeling good about ourselves, we tend to treat the people around us that poorly. And so, I definitely noticed that over the past couple of months, like both of those polar opposites, whether it's like I'm not involved or I'm feeling isolated, whether that's because I can't get to a meeting in person. And, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic kind of isolated everyone. And so that's exactly where the disease wants me today, because then it can have its way with me when it's just me and the disease, and then staying in isolation.
That really sounds horrible. The disease is just having its way with me. It's like, are you getting assaulted, dude?
Listen, I'm telling you.
Do we need to call somebody?
Sometimes it feels like, hey, listen, sometimes the disease of addiction does feel like it's like assaulting me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like just taking over, and it's up to me, my higher power, and those around me that I choose to like trust and lean on in this program or in my recovery to help me get out of my way of thinking, get the disease out of the way and help me see something from a different perspective. I can't spot self-deception. So if I'm around people that can pull me up on the things that are going on in my life that may not be conducive to recovery, then I can get a different perspective, and maybe I can gain some insight to help me learn something new about myself or a behavior that I need to change. So, so lately, recovery has been really sporadic, I guess you could say, for me.
Yeah.
I just started getting back to in-person meetings, which I love it. And I shared a little bit at the meeting, and it's funny that I saw you, David, last night at the meeting, because I haven't seen you in months, and here I'm doing the podcast the next day, and I run into you at the meeting last night. So
it's God's will, bro.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, it was cool. It definitely helped me feel more comfortable walking into this, and so, yeah, man. But the sporadicness of my recovery lately, getting back to in-person meetings has been super helpful. I guess when I moved down, so I'm from York, PA, as I said, and let me just start from square one, and then I'll get to where I'm at today. How's that?
Perfect.
All right, so I was born and raised in York, Pennsylvania. York is an interesting town, and I'll tell you why. Because I-83 runs right through York, and Route 30. Well, and as you know, I-83 also comes down to Baltimore. So the drugs come up from Baltimore into York, and also Route 30 runs and intersects to York as well, which takes you to Philadelphia. So it's like a drug hub, York, Pennsylvania, and but I grew up well off. I didn't really have. I grew up in a good family, I guess you could say. I never needed for anything, my physical needs were taken care of. My mental and emotional needs were taken care of growing up. And I just I experimented with alcohol at a very young age. I think it was 11 or 12. And then
what was your first drink?
From there. It was, what was my first drink? I want to say it was a Captain and Coke. And
wow, at age 11, man, you were going hard in the paint.
Man. Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't beer because it wasn't accessible. I guess it was accessible, but I knew that if I drank one of my dad's beers, he would know. I never see my parents growing up drinking liquor, so they had a liquor cabinet that was eventually later on, as my disease progressed, they had to lock it up. But in the beginning, it was wide open, and it was way easier to take a little shot of this here and there, maybe water it down a little bit in the bottle so they couldn't tell anything was missing, rather than taking a beer when there's only maybe 6 or a 12-pack in the fridge. Yeah. So
real quick, Eric, what was your first drink?
It was some Russian-sounding vodka, and I'm pretty sure Natty Light.
Oh, gross. What was yours?
I have no idea.
Mine was totally Mike's Hard Lemonade. Total pussy drink.
Some fruity Smirnoff flavor.
It's Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Are you proud of that?
No, not at all.
I'm just making sure.
No, 100%. I'm full of shame right now.
Good.
Anyway,
back
to you, Aaron.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. I'm thirsty now.
Oh, no, God.
I'm kidding.
No. We triggered him, Eric. Way to go.
No, so alcohol to weed to anything under the sun that would change the way I felt about myself. Because I did say earlier that my mental and emotional needs were met as a child. And I think maybe that was a bit of a tale, because there was something going on with me mentally, maybe emotionally, that made me feel different. And I think a lot of it, I dug to the root of it a long time ago. And I think that it was that I was comparing myself to my brother, who was a straight A student. He graduated college or high school and went on to become a helicopter pilot. Then he went to the Naval Academy and graduated with honors there, and was an officer in the Coast Guard, and he's still in the Coast Guard, and I don't even know his rank now. I think he's a lieutenant. I don't know exactly, but he does good for himself, and he also went to college at the University of Pittsburgh. And here is, Aaron, the 18-month-old younger brother who doesn't have anything going on for himself, doesn't have any idea what he wants to do when he grows up. I just like to smoke weed, and and run around the neighborhood and chase girls and you name it. So, that emotional disconnect, I guess, it developed over time, and I found myself, changing the reason that I picked up the drink in the first place. Like, at first it was just because I was young and I was curious, and then I found a reason to drink and a reason to smoke weed. And it just, as I kept digging myself a deeper hole, my brother kept accelerating his life, doing things that were like beyond my belief and beyond what I thought my ability to, just do well in life or capable. Like, I didn't think I was capable of anything remotely near what he was doing. So I was just like, let me just drown this all out. This is just a bunch of noise that's giving me a headache, and I don't want to deal with it. So yeah, man. And I think I've come to learn that I'm not my brother anymore. I'm not my brother. I don't have to live up to how he lives, and I'm proud of him and I love him. And so I've been able to deal with that. But that was really like a big issue for me early on. And so I don't know. The drugs, they all bring us to our knees. Like, for me, the drugs kind of like shot me out, I mean, you might be able to hear it in the way I'm talking, I try to sound or try to talk about some things, and I just draw a blank sometimes, man. And I think that
we're all crispy.
I think it is also because I'm caught in this loop right now with going to work and coming home, and I just say the same things at work to the customers on the phone. And honestly, my job right now has got me in a place that I don't like to be, and I think it's because I don't like to feel like someone else is taking over my thoughts. Like, I feel like my job is so busy where I work that I don't have the ability to think for myself very much, because as soon as I try to have a thought to myself or a knock at the door, and I'll talk more about that later, but leading up to where I am now, what happened was I went to about 4 or 5, maybe 6 rehabs until I was like, finally realized I needed to do something. Like, I actually have a problem, because the first couple times I went to rehab, I thought, well, this is not really, I'm not really an addict. I just like to use heroin. I like to cocaine. It's just a thing. It's a hobby, right? Like, I justified and rationalized it anyway.
Dude, that's a fucked up hobby.
Make me feel okay. I'm telling you, man. And it took me down some dark places, including one thing that, I guess towards the end of my road, when I was like going the hardest and I wanted to change the most, it was like 2016, 2017. So, and in April of 2016, I had a fatal overdose that literally scared the life out of me, scared the life out of my family. I was found in my parents' bathroom, butt naked, blue, and I know it sounds funny, but it's, it gets serious. My lips were blue. I wasn't breathing. I had taken the Narcan that my mom had in the medicine cabinet. I had taken it with me to go cop the drugs, and I put it on my passenger seat in my car, because I was like, I'm gonna go get high. I think at that point, that particular day, I hadn't used for like a week or something. I just knew my tolerance was down. There had to be some reason that I took like the Narcan with me. I mean, I can't quite remember what it was, but I was like, all right, I know I can't like hit myself with Narcan, but at least if it's on my seat, if someone finds me, maybe they can. Like that was my sick thinking.
Yeah.
And so I left it in the car and I went in the house when I got the drugs and got home. And I remember like doing a couple shots throughout the night, and then I did one around 11 o'clock, and I went into the bathroom and I sat on the toilet and I fell asleep. Like that's what I thought. I thought I was so tired and I was just like gonna fall asleep. Well, here, unbeknownst to me at that time, you know, I was actually overdosing. And so it was very peaceful. I thought I was just like, you know, falling asleep on the toilet. Like who does that, right?
Butt naked.
But I was okay. Yeah, butt naked. Like, you know, it's crazy. I mean, hopefully you don't get any like picture, you know, bad images in your head.
I am
like,
totally visualizing 100% of this, dude.
Well, I apologize for that, but you know.
Oh no, it's a glorious picture, buddy. Well, sort of.
I appreciate that, Dave. I mean, I'm flattered. That's coming for you. It's very flattering, you know.
This got really weird really quick.
Yeah, it did.
It certainly did. It certainly did.
Okay,
You
so
know,
it's peaceful. You're falling asleep butt naked on the toilet. Continue.
If I can, it's getting hot and heavy over here. I don't know.
David has that effect on people.
So, yeah, I can tell. But anyways, this is good content right now.
Oh, this is gold.
So, yeah. So, like, I'm asleep on the toilet at this time, you know. My breathing must have been super shallow. So,
Yeah.
next thing I remember is that I'm waking up on the bathroom floor, butt naked, and like I was confused, right?
Yeah.
There was, I don't know, I want to say there was at least 3 paramedics in the small bathroom with hovering over me, my mom in the bathroom as well, and then in the hallway there was like 2 police officers and my dad. So like, you know, I was shocked. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
I just remember like coming to, and one of the paramedics like said, "Here it comes," and next thing you know, it was like projectile vomiting everywhere, all and
Jesus.
you know, hanging my head over the toilet. And when I, not even like what felt like 2 or 3 minutes after that, the cops were already asking, "Where's the rest of the drugs? Where's the rest of the drugs?" And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you know,
Yeah. In my vein, you
I don't know
idiot.
what's going on right now. Yeah, in my vein. Yeah, I did have like two or 3 bags left over somewhere. They ended up finding them on their own in my bedroom. So at this point, I'm coming to, and I'd already been plugged in Narcotics Anonymous by that point in time, so I had people that I could call, and thank God I didn't have to. You know, my mom and my now ex-wife at that point in time. Well, my mom notified my wife at the time, and she notified some people that were in my network, and they got me to the hospital, and I'm in the hospital, and some people from my recovery network showed up, which is really super encouraging. And I think that carried me through the rest of the night. Like, there is still hope, there's still hope. I almost died. I didn't die. I'm still here, and there's hope waiting for me on the other side of this wall.
Was it guys from Northwest?
No, they were from York.
Oh, okay.
So this happened in York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm not to that part in my journey yet. Now, moving on from there, I do remember, I was in the hospital bed, sobering up essentially. The nurse kept coming in and, "How are you feeling?" Checking my vitals, basically, trying to get me to drink water, flush my system, Yeah. But I wasn't in that hospital room for 2 hours before they told me, like, "All right, it's time for you to go." And I was like, "What?" Like, I feel like the drugs creeping back in. Because I don't know if you know this, but when you get hit with Narcan, it kicks the opiates off of your receptors in your brain. But once the Narcan wears off, those opioids can still come back and bind to the receptors again. So you can feel high even after you got Narcan. So that started happening to me, and I'm like, yeah. And that I was like, well, you're sending me home, but I'm like, I'm starting to get high again. Like it blew my mind that they were in that much of a hurry to get me out of there.
Yeah.
So that was a really pivotal experience in my life. And actually, I wrote a song about it that I recorded, and it's on YouTube. I can certainly share that link with you guys.
Yeah.
Another time. But if anyone who's listening wants to check it out, I do have a YouTube page. If you don't mind if I plug that, do you?
No.
Okay. So it's youtube.com/aliverecovery. It's A Live Recovery. The song is called Never Forget. So if you want to hear about that experience, it's a very powerful song. It's just my account of what happened that night, written into music. So it's a very pivotal point in my life. And at this point, you did ask about Northwest. So getting to that period of my life, at this point in time, I had some experience in and out of Narcotics Anonymous, and I had met some people from the Northwest area through another guy in Alcoholics Anonymous at the time, which, by the way, I should probably touch on that real quick because, I had an experience in the other fellowship that I was in, AA, where I had a sponsor. He was an older gentleman, 70s, 80s, and I was in and out, and my mom, I remember my mom telling me the one day, if you get high tonight, you're not coming home to sleep, right? So I was like, all right, well, I'm high, so I know you're gonna know when I get home. So she was like, well, you can't go home. So at that point in time, I didn't have very many options. I just knew a couple people in the program. I had a sponsor, and I called him, and he was like, yeah, you can come crash in my place. So I got there, and he was like, yeah, don't mind this room over here. There's bloodstains on the carpet because one of my sponsees just overdosed and died here last week. And I was like, oh
my God.
Crazy. Yeah. So I'm like, that's fine. Where can I sleep? He's like, you can sleep on the couch. So I got comfortable on the couch, and he decided to try to get comfortable with me on the couch. I was like, all right, that's weird. But I didn't really think too much of it because I was like, he's probably just trying to comfort me, make me feel like I'm not alone, because I was pretty down and vulnerable that night. As the night progresses on, he tries to, touch me inappropriately, and I flipped out. I was like, what the hell are you doing? So that turned me off to Narcotics Anonymous. Or not Narcotics, I'm sorry, Alcoholics Anonymous, because of that experience that I had, and it really fucked me up. So at this point in time, I had met somebody else in Alcoholics Anonymous that introduced me to somebody in Narcotics Anonymous, Northwest area, and I was recording his music at the time. He was coming up to York, Pennsylvania, and recording in my studio. And
is that Brian?
He kept telling that was, yeah.
Okay.
He was telling me for a while, hey, come down, come to Narcotics Anonymous. Because I was struggling, man. I would record Brian one day, and I would be like, yeah, I've got 2 days clean, he'd be like, awesome. And then the next session he would come, and I would have 2 weeks clean. And then he would come the next time, and I'd be high, and then and he would just be, he was like, just come down to this meeting in Shrewsbury. I'm telling you, there's a bunch of other guys your age. You're gonna find what you need. So I was like, all right, yeah, this is clearly not working for me. So let me come down and check it out. And I did. I ended up making it my home group for at least 2 years. I want to say 2 or 3 years. In and out, white heat tags galore. I have I had such trouble like following direction because I believe it's true what they say. Like it's attraction over promotion. And, you know, it took me a while to find that, to get that attraction that I needed to motivate me to change my life. Because everyone was like breathing. I felt like everyone was breathing down my neck telling me, this is what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Like Narcotics Anonymous saved my life, and just do what I do and you're going to be okay. And I couldn't buy into that shit. I had to see somebody else come out of that. I had to see someone else's life change. Because when I got there, all these other people like seemed cured to me. I was like, okay, I get it. It works for them. It's not going to work for me though, you know?
Yeah.
So I had to see someone else like go through the same thing I was going through, come out of it, and see their life change. And eventually, after coming around for so long, I saw that. And it inspired me to do the same thing. And so I had periods of abstinence. At this point, we're talking around like spring 2017. I had about, after the overdose, I think I got like 9 months or so clean. And then I went out to Oregon State for my brother's wedding, which I was DJing. And when we touched down at the airport, the rental car that we were supposed to have was not available. So we had to get this other car because we rented from a private owner. It was like the Airbnb of rental cars. Yeah. You know? So he was like, yeah, this Jeep that I was gonna rent to you guys, like I wrecked it this week, so I have this like 1994 Dodge Grand Caravan. So we're like, okay, sure. So we just need to get to my brother's house from the airport. It's like 2 hours. Sure, we'll just take this car. So we did that, and we got down the road probably half an hour, and the car starts like smoking. You know, it still had like temporary tags on, so we think that the guy just like bought it to like rent to us for the week, and he was gonna like pay it off with the rental that we paid him, the rent money that we paid him.
Sounds about right.
So we ended up like pulling into a gas station, and when we pulled into the parking lot, we found out that the brakes didn't work. So the engine's smoking, the brakes aren't working, and we slam into like the parking space stopper. We're like, all right, well, we stopped, so that's good. We didn't run through like the pump, the glass wall at McDonald's or whatever. So we're in McDonald's and we're like calling this Airbnb of rental cars, like we need our money back, we need a car, and I'm like, all right, well, since we're out in Oregon, I know they have like legal pot out here. So while my parents are dealing with that shit, I'm on Google like trying to find the nearest like weed store, which was 2 blocks away. So I was like, hey guys, I'm gonna go walk this off. Like you guys figure it out. You know, I went and bought some edibles, and I took them every day that I was out there for my brother's wedding.
Nice.
So like the very last day, I had a little bit left, and I knew I couldn't fly it home, and I just looked at it in my hand, and I was after having 9 months clean off of heroin, and then using like edible marijuana for, I don't know,
just for the fuck of it, yeah.
Yeah, but I was using it for 5 days, and I'll tell you what, like I was back at that desperation like that I felt when I was trying to get off heroin. I just felt dead, like spiritually.
Yeah.
And so I threw the rest of it in the ocean. I was like, I gotta go home. And within 2 weeks from getting home from Oregon, I was shooting dope again. And I was like, all right, I need to go to rehab. And I was like, this is it. Like, I'm gonna die if I don't do something. And so that's when I went to my last rehab. That was fall of 2017. So I used for another couple months after my brother's wedding in the spring. fall of 2017, I went into a 30-day treatment center, and dude, it was a mess. Like, it was a great treatment center, but the plumbing stopped working. So halfway into my stay there was no flushing toilets, no running water. They had to take us to the Motel 6 in New York City for like 2 nights, where they were like selling crack and prostitutes were selling themselves in the hotel. And it was just wild. So I ended up completing the program miraculously.
Yeah.
And I kept calling, like going in and talk to my counselor and trying to call Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian's like, yeah, like you can move down here to Westminster. And I was like, perfect. Like, I get out in like 3 days. Make sure you answer your phone call. And when it was time to do like the discharge papers, like he wasn't picking up. I couldn't get a hold of him. So they were like, look, we're gonna take you to this recovery house. I was like, all right, sure. I got to the recovery house. It was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in the city, where again I was surrounded by drug dealers and prostitution. So I was like, I was there for like 2 or 3 hours, super uncomfortable, like, and I was like, God, I'm gonna just blow up Brian's phone until he picks up. Well, eventually he picked up. The house manager came back, and I was like, look, dude, I'm out of here. Like, my parents are coming to pick me up, and I'm moving out of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what I did. I went to my parents' house, got everything that I needed, went down to Brian's house. They welcomed me back. Because I forgot to mention, my story is just like so detailed. But before I even moved there, back to Westminster, and I say back to Westminster because before the treatment center, Brian, I told Brian, like, all right, I'm at it. I just did like 3 days detox at home. I'm ready to move down. And like, I went down there, but I took heroin with me, and I like used after being moved all my shit into this bedroom in his house. And then I got high, and he was like, dude, what's up with you, bro? I was like, what are you talking about? What's up with me? Like, I just detoxed for 3 days. That's why I feel and look like shit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, no, you're going to piss in a cup right now. And I was like, okay. So I pissed in a cup, and he's like, dude, you can't be here if you're going to use. And I was like, all right, well, give me my $50 back. You know, that I gave him for, like, security deposit to rent a room in his house.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and took that $50. I drove back to York, and I got high.
Mm.
And that's when I went to treatment. And then so I came back to Brian, and I stayed clean from I think it was September through February. It was like February 17th.
Mm-hmm.
I had still been in the process of moving stuff down from my parents' house, and I found I found a dirty cotton ball in one of the items that I moved down to Brian's house. And I was like, well, I'm just going to put water on it and like sniff the water. So I did that, and I got high on February 17th, 2018. And the next morning I got honest with Brian, and I was like, look, dude, I used last night. It was like, I didn't plan it out. I found this, and I got honest, and that's where my journey started that I'm on right now. So, 2.5 years clean later, I keep in mind, guys, I was married through all that. I just went through.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. And like you like sprinkled that in right in the middle, and Carly and I just looked at each other like, yo, what the fuck? Someone didn't like, dude.
Yeah. So when I moved down to Maryland, I knew like I have to let this girl go. Like, you know.
Now was she an addict as well?
No, she was not. But she enabled me to use. Like, she enabled me. Of course, I'm not blaming her, pointing the finger, but like, she was not an addict. She stayed with me for 6 years while I used, and just created a shitstorm in our lives, you know. Yeah. And I was like, look, it's in her best interest for me to just wash my hands clean and let her go find a new sense of purpose in her life. So I did that. But it was super hard. I wanted to do it, but I didn't know how to, because in early recovery, I'm trying to find myself, and like the last thing I want to do is like think about somebody else, I need to get better. So, and I was still in that self-seeking mentality, just because I'm clean doesn't mean that I'm don't have all these other issues, So I'm still being very selfish, and I'm like focusing on my recovery and how I can build a better life for myself. Meanwhile, like I'm stringing her along for the ride of even more destruction to our marriage. Yeah. Even though I'm clean, I'm out there and I'm like sleeping with girls, and I ended up getting one pregnant, right? My daughter is 17 months old this month. So I got this girl pregnant in my first year of recovery, and man, it was the result of a 2-night stand. And when she told me that she was pregnant, I said, well, I'm sorry, but like, we're not going to be together. And, so if you want to have this child, then just keep that in mind, and so she decided that she wanted to, carry our child, and I supported her through it. And during that uncertainty, because to be honest with you guys, I wasn't sure if it was really even my child, but I was told to act as if, because if I go through the pregnancy and I'm like, there's no way that's my child, and then I get a paternity test and I find out it's mine, then what kind of scumbag am I then? So I'm so glad to listen to the people in my life that were just like, just act as if. So I did that, and I showed up to the doctor's appointments, and I was there for my daughter's birth, not knowing, and then I got a paternity test, and I've been in my daughter's life since day one, and I talked about it a little last night in a meeting. Like, it took a year, but I obtained 50-50 custody of my daughter, and, my baby's mama trusts me, to raise our child when she's not there. And like, I trust her to do the same. So, there's a lot of uncomfortability with that still. So in the meantime, I know this sounds sick, and it probably is, but I'm going through a divorce. I got another girl pregnant, and then told her I wasn't going to be with her. And that was, I think I got her pregnant like this time of year. So then I met a girl in November of 2018. Yeah. 2018. Yes. And on New Year's Eve of 2018, I was like, man, I really love this girl. Like, how am I going to tell her that she already knows I'm going through a divorce? How am I going to tell her I have a kid on the way? Like, we've already been dating for 2 solid months now. Like, she's amazing. I see a future with her. Like, so let me go into the new year without harboring any like secrets. So I told her, and like, she supported me. Wow. Through it all. Yeah, I mean, and she's not in recovery either. You met her last night. Yeah. Lena. She's an amazing woman. I love her to death. Yeah. So, yeah, man, there's just been a lot of crazy shit. Like,
I would say so.
Very detailed. I went into a very detailed story. The purpose of that was to like just reflect and see where I've come from and see how I'm living now.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about just a couple other things, and then get into where my recovery is today. When, like, at the end of my road, I found out that like I was diagnosed with like Hep C, and I thought that was it. Like, I thought, all right, I really did it now. Like, this is what I want to die from. That's it. But eventually, after like showing up to the doctor's appointments to get treated, I think it took like 2 years to get treated for it, because like going in and out of being clean and being in recovery, and then going to use again. The doctor like wouldn't give me the treatment, I couldn't get approved by insurance. You have to be clean a certain amount of time. But the last appointment I went to, I had somebody in the program with me that vouched for my clean time, and they submitted to the insurance. And I finally, after 2 years of chasing this gastroenterologist, they approved me for the medication. Like, I don't have Hep C. It's not detectable anymore. So that was like a huge thing, like a huge milestone, because it showed me that if I stop using, I can live a better life. I can find a new way to live and just, put the past to rest.
Yeah.
So I got into like this serious car accident my first year, where I had to go to the hospital, and they tried to offer me painkillers, and I took instead of that, I took anti-inflammatory, and
like ibuprofen.
And I went to physical. It's not. I don't know exactly what it was. I don't think it was that, but it was along those lines.
Yeah.
And then I took physical therapy for 6 months, and I fixed my injury. I just my life is so much different today, and really moving down to the west side. How I got here now is through my girlfriend. It was time for me to move out of Bryant. I was there for 2 years, and I got what I needed there. I'm grateful for him and his wife. They helped me change my life, and they showed me how to live, and they taught me so much about just doing the next right thing. And Brian, I still consider him my best friend, but we don't talk anymore. And that's really hard. And it's really hard for me. I feel like it's something I need to address in my step work. So as I said in the beginning of the podcast, I've been very complacent recently, and I haven't been calling my sponsor, who's also in the Northwest area. And so I decided after since this pandemic.
Who's your sponsor?
Well, my sponsor right now is Chris W.
Oh, okay.
Shelby and Chris, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think he was on your podcast.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I know Chris. He's awesome.
So he's Chris W. Yeah, man. And so I got a new home group when I moved down the west side. Of course, the pandemic stopped us from being able to meet in person. They still haven't opened up, so I decided last Monday, all right, it's time to get a new home group. So I joined the Ellicott City group on Monday nights, and unfortunately, I don't really talk to Chris. And I kind of lost touch during this pandemic, and he's a great guy. I just need somebody that I can see.
Yeah.
And I that's just my story, man. I know I've heard so many people in this process that have long distance sponsee relationships, and I just can't do that. I've always needed to be in close proximity to somebody that is sponsoring me, so that I can see them, know that so I can see them living what they're saying. For me, that's important. And so Chris helped me a lot, because before Chris, I had another sponsor who was sponsoring 9 guys in my area, and he dropped us all and left Narcotics Anonymous out of the blue. It was very abrupt, and he kind of left us all not knowing what to do with our recovery. So Chris was more like a transitional sponsor until I could get to a place where I could find that connection with someone. And so I finally found that connection with someone, and I asked them to sponsor me on Friday night. And he said, just call Chris, talk to Chris about it, and then call him back, and we'll move forward. And so that's my plan. I'm starting to take action again in my process, because I found that the complacency and the isolation that I've experienced through the pandemic put me in a place of desperation, where it's the thoughts of using had come and gone before the pandemic, but the thoughts of using now sound a little bit better. They sound better every time I think about it, and that scares me.
Yeah.
And I see different ways that I'm acting out that, in fact, my girlfriend pointed it out to me. She's like, you're not the guy I met when we first got together. You're not working on yourself anymore. You're just, you're raising your daughter, which is great. But the thing of it is about that, I've been here for my daughter because, like I said, I got 50-50 custody of my daughter in March, right when the pandemic hit. So, of course, I'm spending all this time focusing on her and not focusing on me. But my daughter needs me long term, so I need to invest in myself so that she can have that. So, yeah, man, that's pretty much all I got. I mean, I feel like I really just unloaded and just, I hope it was educational for you guys or informative.
It was. I've learned so much about you.
Yeah,
man. We definitely have some questions. Who would like to go first? Anybody? Okay, Brace pointing at me. Everybody's shy. All right, so I'm going to go back to really kind of what you said last night at the meeting and what you sort of started with tonight, which was like telling on yourself. How important is that in recovery to be willing to get honest and tell on yourself and admit your mistakes and try and better yourself and learn and grow through them?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. It's pivotal. It's vital. The three indispensable principles are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, right? And you can't get one without the other, in my experience. If I'm not honest, I'm not open-minded. I'm not willing to do anything different.
Yeah.
But if I'm honest, then I can be open-minded and I can be willing to make changes. So I had that experience where I used that one night at Brian's house after coming back to his house for the second time and finding that saturated cotton ball. And I got honest the next day. Now, of course, Helen called me out on that shit because she saw right through it.
Yeah.
But before you call me out on getting high or something, I'm going to deny it and deny it and deny it.
Yep.
But I had learned that got me nowhere. Me lying to you about what I'm doing is not helping me.
Absolutely.
It's making my condition worse.
Yep.
So yeah, it's vital if I want to grow in the process and get better with self.
Nice. All right. Eric, Carly, who's next?
I'll go.
All right, Eric.
So you're talking about kind of your relationship with your friend Brian and your sponsor Chris, and kind of how naturally relationships change throughout our life, right? And we'll inevitably grow apart or come together, and some relationships stay and some relationships fall apart. And it might not be anyone's fault, but it does happen.
It's your fault, Eric.
So, well, I just don't call people, So, I mean, it's not is it my fault if I don't try, right? I mean, is that my fault? Maybe someone should try harder, But, so my question before David interrupted me so rudely was, how do you look at that? These relationships changing, and what is your outlook on that? Because sometimes you can think oh man, these aren't my friends, why aren't they hitting me up? But I don't know, people get busy, life changes. I'm at a different place now in my life than I was 5 years ago.
Oh yeah. And
I hope that people can respect that and understand that, but sometimes people fucking can't. And it's dude, I have a full-time job, I have a wife, I'm at a different point in my life right now than I was when I could hang out every night. And how are you looking at kind of the evolution of your relationships as you progress in your recovery?
Ooh, Good question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, too. It's kind of touchy, my relationship. When you mentioned Brian, like I said, I consider him my best friend, but we don't talk anymore, and that's hard for me. He's a great guy. I think we're just on two different wavelengths, and we're honestly, I think, and maybe that's not even it. Maybe we're so much alike, and we just don't get along anymore. Or maybe it's because, we had so many dynamics to our relationship that we could fix one dynamic and then there's still an issue over here. Like, he was my landlord, my best friend. I was his, recording engineer for 5-6 years. So we had all these different dynamics, and it just made things hard, and we would try to mend things. And so, honestly, that's a hard question to ask when I consider Brian, because I feel like there's a lot of things left trying to think of the word, unresolved, that I feel like I need to either resolve with my higher power and my step work, because we've tried to resolve it together and it just never clicked. And maybe that, I don't want to say it's either one of our faults. Maybe it's just, it was time for us to just move on from one another. And that's, if that's the case, like, I have to be okay with that, and to be quite honest with you, Eric, like, it's not easy, sometimes, and the way I left too, from his house was very abrupt. Like, I had planned on moving down here anyway, a month from the time that I did. It's just some other situations happened that forced me to move out a little bit quicker than I planned. And, that's, I think, where a lot of the uneasiness stems from. But as far as, to answer your question as a whole, I do see where some of my relationships have gotten even closer with some of the people in the Northwest area that I'm not around anymore. Or people that I'm developing relationships with now in this area. Relationship with my brother is completely different than what I was using. I have a lot of respect for him, and I have respect for myself now. So the better I get with myself, the better friend I can be, or the better I can be in this relationship with whoever it may be. So as my recovery evolves, so do my relationships. And I think certain people are in your life for a period of time when they need to be, and then you can grow apart. And while it's not easy, sometimes it's just, I have to learn to be okay with that. And so that's where I'm at with it today.
Nice. What you got, Carly?
All right. So I've had a very similar experience to you during this pandemic, where I just got real complacent in recovery and felt isolated and distant from everybody. And I not so much, I guess, worked on my recovery, but it was a good time for me for self-care and to do some things and prioritize myself. So what have you been able to...
plan a wedding.
Yeah, plan a wedding, or just,
big girl shit.
Do me things.
Yeah.
Which I don't get time for. So what are some things that you have done during this pandemic to maybe put yourself first, or just stay vigilant in your recovery?
Yeah, well, that's a great question too, Carly. I think, I know that in regards to staying vigilant in my recovery, so I also do a recovery podcast, and I talked a little bit about it with you guys last night. It's called A Live Podcast, and I'm kind of going through some changes and rebranding with that. It's going to be called A Live Recovery Podcast when I start up the next season.
Nice.
And I've changed the logo and stuff like that. But, that really helped me at first, because meetings shut down, but I was in the middle of this podcast season where I'm talking to other people in recovery, and that was really helpful. Then season ended, and one of the things I really like to do, and the reason I don't do my podcast in the summer months, is because I'm a very outdoorsy kind of guy. So if I have the opportunity to be outdoors, I don't want to have a commitment to be doing something indoors.
Yeah.
So just as an example, like today I went down to Severna Park area and went out on my kayak.
I peeped that on Facebook.
Yeah, man. So, and I do that a lot. My girlfriend paddleboards, and so it's a hobby that we share. I like to fish. I like to snowboard. Of course, I didn't snowboard in the pandemic. Let's face it, it's not wintertime, but but yeah, I mean, really just getting to know my daughter as she develops this awesome personality has been the one thing that has really held me together. She's amazing. Her name is Paisley. I love her to death. And, watching her develop, she's 17 months old. So she's walking. She started to run. She's learning words. Right now she speaks gibberish, but every now and again I'll say a word and she'll repeat it. Like just last week, I think it was like I said, "You want a piece of watermelon?" And she was like, "Watermelon?" And I was like, "Yes, watermelon." Yes, I did that. It's just, I don't know if you guys have kids, but it's just an amazing experience. So that has been, super cool. I also have my girlfriend's daughter. She's 11. She's developing into her own person as well. In fact, real quick about her, last fall we got a call. Like, she had been like, her eating habits had changed and stuff, and we were like, she was always lethargic and stuff. So she got tested for different stuff at the hospital, and it was going to take several days to get the results back. And all of a sudden, we get a phone call like 3 a.m, and we're asleep, And the hospital's like, "You need to bring her into the hospital right away." We're like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Just bring her." Well, it turns out she's type 1 diabetic, and her blood sugar was extremely high. Where it was essentially like syrup running through her veins, like molasses,
Good Lord.
So, yeah. And that's been an adjustment. I've seen her come so far in the past half a year. It's just been amazing. So just being there to support her, support my girlfriend, raise my daughter, we're one happy family, that's for sure. I mean,
that's awesome.
It's been great. So yeah, those are some of the things that I've done to help keep me sane through this pandemic, if you will.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Eric, do you want to do a topic? Did you pick one out?
I was going to do a Twitter question, actually.
Oh, well then let's do a Twitter question. Is it that time? Is it that
for
time?
me to ask a Twitter question?
Is it that time? No,
it's not
Eric?
that time. No.
It is that time.
To ask a Twitter question.
It's that time to go to the Twitter, ladies and gentlemen.
Fucking hate you.
God, dude. Aaron, they hate that, and there's just the animosity just fuels me. On so many levels. Oh yeah, I love their disdain for it.
So this question is from CD Suboxen. And it is a topic. So we've talked about this topic before, but I feel like it's probably time to talk about it again. And it's harm reduction. So, all right, Aaron. So the way this works is you'll discuss the topic first, and then David, then Carly, and then myself.
Eric always gets to go last.
Harm reduction, right?
Yep, harm reduction.
Man, that kind of caught me out of left field,
Ooh, good.
Because this whole podcast has been, about myself, and then all of a sudden I have to talk about something else. But I'm a selfish addict, you know.
We gotta keep you on your toes, man.
Kidding. Yeah, you do. So harm reduction, man, I think it's important, you know, because as long as there's addicts, there's going to be dirty needles, and there's going to be disease. Mm-hmm. There's going to be just unhealthy stuff going on. So I think it's important that there's needle exchanges. Mm-hmm. You know, I never went to one, but there's needle exchanges, and there's these things that you can get now to like test your drugs and make sure you know what you're putting in your body before you do, which I think is amazing. Yeah. Now, in my addiction, would I have ever taken the time to test my drugs? Hell no. Mm-hmm. But for like, that can save lives. Yeah. I think if people knew more about it and it was more readily available, I think that it would save lives. And
Eric's the type of the nerd that would have tested his drugs.
Fuck yeah! If I'm getting like an e-pill, I'm definitely testing that shit. Like, you know. Fuck yeah!
You sit there with beakers and test tubes and find out the exact molecular structure of what he's putting into his body.
It's always good to go in educated.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's important to know, especially with like fentanyl and they're putting fentanyl and all kinds of crap. Weed, I hear, and weed now.
Yeah.
It's just wild. So harm reduction is super important. That's really all I have on. I want to hear what you guys have to say about harm reduction.
All right. So it's me, Carly, and Eric. All right. So I agree. Harm reduction is huge, and not just needle exchange programs. I didn't know about those like drug testing kits. That's pretty cool, actually. Like, I know I made like a joke about it, but that's actually really a very good thing. And in my recovery process, it really evolved a lot from being very staunch, like the NA abstinence type way. And that's just not everybody's story, and it's not everybody's type of recovery. So I believe that a harm reduction story is very much a success story in recovery. So if somebody has been shooting heroin for X amount of years, and then they switch over to Suboxone for X amount of years, and their life gets better, I think that's a win. Like, Suboxone isn't going to kill you. Like, if that's their level of recovery that they can attain, then that's an absolute win. I don't think it's responsible anymore for fellowships to really shun those people or say they can't work steps, because it's not like, and I understand that's like the NA fellowship, like that's their stance, is like abstinence from all drugs, but like sometimes you really have to meet people where they're at. And if working steps with somebody who's on Suboxone or methadone or Subutex or whatever, after so many years like of doing it, maybe that willingness on the fellowship end to meet them where they're at finally is like the final push for them to like get off their maintenance. Then I think it's more important to do what's right for the addict than necessarily do what's right for the fellowship. Like, if like saving somebody's life, in my opinion, is more important than following the quote unquote rules of Narcotics Anonymous. Like, fuck that. Like, if somebody came up to me and they're on Suboxone and they're like, I want to work steps, I'm like, cool, let's work some fucking steps, because this shit's going to save your life. Suboxone's not going to kill you. And really, like, telling people on maintenance that they're not clean, or they're not allowed to work steps, or they're not allowed to have jobs, that can fucking kill people, and I disagree with it entirely. So that's my stance on harm reduction.
I would have to agree.
I was actually on Suboxone for years.
Yeah.
So I had that experience coming into NA with,
Yeah, we know a lot of people who have. Yeah, and it can fucking kill people, and I'm sick of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree. I don't know if it was the fact that when I came into NA, the network that I became a part of was very open-minded to that idea. But that never really like crossed my mind, like, oh, NA's against it, like, so I'm against it type thing. And even before coming into recovery, I worked at a maintenance clinic. So just being able to see people come in on a daily basis and then be able to go function and go to a job and have a life. And I mean, yes, they were depending on something, but if it was something that was going to help them and work for them, then I think it's totally acceptable. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And if you have a desire to make a change, and I think that any way that you can possibly do that is the right way to go. It's going to be different for everybody, but like if it doesn't work for me, I can't go to somebody else and say you're doing it wrong. Like that's not the way that this is supposed to work. So I think if they're trying, then you've got to be there to be supportive. Yeah,
absolutely. And last but not least,
so
the Wizard of Oz.
So first and foremost, if you're using intravenous drugs, use clean needles. Always.
Nice.
Always.
Love that.
It's important. Yeah. Like, that's how people get like Hep C and get HIV. And, you know, I mean, you fuck up sometimes because the drug overrides, like, you know,
how much you give a shit.
How much you care.
Yeah.
But
that's what, I'm so glad you said that, Eric.
Safe needles, like, and needle exchanges are.
No, that's all him. He's a genius.
You know, I mean, they're necessary because, like, as much as people want to pretend that, you know, like the war on drugs can be won, like that's stupid. So like there's always going to be a way to get high, and like people are going to just start, like, you know, if like let's say all the heroin was gone, that's how crocodile gets created, right? Bath salts. But like honestly, you know, and this is probably why we lose listeners sometimes, but like NA and AA are not the only way. There's tons and tons of programs that deal with like moderation and like management, and like, yes, I know, like if you're in a fellowship, like thinking about, you know, recovery in a term that doesn't, like, you know, subscribe to abstinence doesn't mean recovery for you. But again, that doesn't fucking matter because it's not for you. It's for someone else who that works for. And I think understanding that harm reduction, you know, can help people, and just because it didn't help you doesn't mean it doesn't, like, that it's just fucking, like, you know, no one can fucking do it.
Yeah, it's not. It's invalid.
Yeah, like, first off, fuck you. And secondly, like, I don't know, maybe, you know,
I love
that's
you so much, Eric.
Well, that's why people die. Is like, you know, it's like, oh, you're on Suboxone, you know, you really shouldn't read who's an addict. And it's like, what? Like, shut the fuck up and let him read the fucking blue piece of paper in the front row. Like, what, you know, why does it matter? You know, it's like, well, you know, you're really not going to get the steps. It's like, dude, this is, you
like, don't know that exactly.
This is a fucking third grade reading level, like in the basic text. Like, they're going to get it. Like, you know, it's not like they can't comprehend the fucking words on the page. Like, you fucking hierarchical, like, motherfucker. Like, no, they'll understand what that means and, like, comprehend it. Like, start working on yourself, even if you're moderating.
I love to just watch them go.
And, you know, maintaining, like, I don't know, do what works for you. So, like, if harm reduction's your way, like, don't let some, you know, like, some NA or AA Nazi tell you that, like, you know, you're gonna fucking die tomorrow if you don't, you know, pick up the big book and start preaching the good word.
Right. I have to say, I think that, you know, practicing that spiritual principle of open-mindedness really needs to apply when it comes to what you're talking about. What, you know, you can't read that piece of literature because you're on Suboxone. What? Yeah, exactly. Practice some open-mindedness, you know, because I've met some people in the program that feel that way. And I think, you know, when Narcotics Anonymous was established and these other 12-step fellowships, there wasn't Suboxone, there wasn't Vivitrol, there wasn't these different things to help someone stop using heroin, or whatever, alcohol,
Yeah.
So now that we have these things at our disposal as addicts, we have to change and evolve. We have to evolve the program as life evolves and changes. That's just my opinion.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I also think that sometimes opinions can kill people too. So that
totally.
It's touchy.
Sure.
Yeah. So anybody who's listening out there, we're just 4 normal people with 4 very different recoveries. We are not the be all end all of recovery. So don't take what we say as gospel. Do your own research in whatever avenue of recovery that you feel is best for you. And if you agree with us, awesome. If you don't, that's okay too. Write us a comment, write us a review, and we'll discuss it with you like normal human beings and not get mad about it, because we're all going to have different points of view, and that's okay. And it's actually great in recovery, because the more points of view you have, the more tools you have in your toolbox to fight this disease and come out with a victory. So, yeah, I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
So we would like to thank our guest, Aaron, for joining us this evening.
Woo! Thank you guys for having me.
All right, Aaron.
I appreciate it.
Let our listeners know all the places they can find you, any links or whatever, what you're doing.
Yeah. So if you're a YouTuber, you can youtube.com/aliverecovery. It's just ALIVE recovery. Same thing with Facebook, facebook.com/aliverecovery. You can also find some of my music on all the streaming services. It's going to be under A.live recovery. Or I'm sorry, no, it's going to be under, I apologize, scratch that. If you're looking for me on Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, Pandora, any of those, Amazon Music, Apple Music, it's going to be A.live music, not recovery music, A.live music. So I have 4 songs up there now. They're all relating to my recovery or addiction or an experience that I had in my process. So if you get a chance, the one I recommend is, because I talked about it tonight, is the one about that overdose called Never Forget. It's very, very powerful song. Yeah, and I just encourage anyone, I'm so glad you said what you said at the end there, David, about, what works for you. That being said, don't compare yourself out. Listen to the similarities, not the differences. And just because something works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, find your own avenue. I just wanted to put emphasis on that because it's important. So thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. Now I'm going to turn it over to Eric with our digital basket.
That's better.
Okay. All right. Well, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there. We're workshopping it.
Maybe information on how to join the home group.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Next time.
There we go.
We got it.
So, here at Podcast Recovery, we are fully self-supporting. So please, in the description below, consider joining the home group and becoming a part of our Patreon page. Or if you just want to throw an extra $1 or $2 into the digital basket, you can look at the links below for Venmo and PayPal. And then also, you can find all our social media at
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. For more information about Carly, Eric, Ali, and myself, go to podcastrecovery.com. You can check us out on all the places, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you can find a podcast, we're there. But most importantly, everybody out there,
stay safe and stay clean.
Bingo. Nailed it.